Welcome, everybody. Chad, Sabrina, thank you very much for joining. Just for a little backstory on this, so today I'm joined by Sabrina and Chad Carson. Both are members of our Facebook group, which is Real Estate Investing for the W-2 Employee. Sabrina is our most recent contest winner. And the contest, we were giving away a copy of Chad Carson's new book, Retire Early with Real Estate. And I think I tagged Chad, or he saw the contest going on and said, hey, I'm going to sweeten the pot. Let me just offer up some time and answer some one-on-one questions. So thank you, Chad, for doing that.
Happy to do it.
And Sabrina, thank you for winning the contest. So you had to do a little work there. It wasn't just, I'm going to pick a hat, person's random name out of the hat. So thank you for participating. And Sabrina, we shared some notes before we started recording this, but just so everyone can learn a little bit more about yourself, tell us where you're from, what do you do for a living, your interest in real estate, and there are many facets of real estate investing. What interests you the most, and then we'll get to Chad's introductions, then we'll get to your questions.
Okay. Thank you for having me, of course. I am a Florida native. I was recently a senior trainer for a pharmacy benefit manager company. I had done that for the last 5 years. That's actually how I ended up moving to Orlando, because I'm originally from this Fort Lauderdale area. So I wanted to do real estate investing for probably the last 20 years, but was never brave enough to actually do it, and never really had the right coaching, the right kind of people around me to say, hey, this is what you do and this is how you do it. And I do have a rather large family, so I had a lot of obligations. Yeah. Well, the kids are now grown up, so now it's kind of, let me just dive into what I know that I really have always wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got to this point where I am now.
There you go. Well, you said a key word there that's going to segue over perfectly for me. So thank you for doing that. You mentioned coaching, and the way I know Chad is through Coach Carson, right? And his many, Chad, I don't know how much materials you have out there, but they seem enormous. The amount of stuff that you put out, and I've learned from and listened to and I read through. But I want to get into, I've been following you for a while, and before we started recording, I made mention of the Tigers, Clemson Tigers. So you're a Clemson alumni. I'm associated by marriage, thankfully. But you have this book coming out, Retire Early with Real Estate. I am familiar with your story, but in case other folks aren't, tell us a little bit more about how you were able to retire early through real estate, and then we'll get into some of Sabrina's questions.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is fun. I'm a real estate nerd and a financial independence nerd. So I love talking about this, and getting to help other people with it. It's kind of is an honor. My story is I started about 16 years ago, 2003. I graduated from college, and I sort of thought I would do this temporary thing of just learning how to invest in real estate. And I thought it would serve me later on. But I kind of got lucky in the sense that I didn't have a lot to lose. Sabrina mentioned having a family and obligations. I mean, we all kind of go through stages of our life, right, where we have more freedom to take on entrepreneurial ventures. And I just happened to have one right when I got out of college, where I didn't have college debt, and I played football at Clemson and got a scholarship. So I was just kind of in the right place to just take a chance and start doing it. And so I started wholesaling properties, where I would just find deals for other people, and just kind of learned one little slice of the business where I just got good at finding deals. And other people had the money. I didn't have any money and really know-how with anything else. And so I got started with that. And it sort of grew, as you learn one piece of the business, you learn that you can get the money to buy deals. And so I started buying, fixer-upper deals with a business partner who we still work together today. And so we would flip those deals. And so we did all flipping for probably the first 3 or 4 years. And then we eventually transitioned into what my kind of long-term passion is buy and hold real estate. So having rental properties and income, and that really kind of led to the concept for the book of how do you actually use real estate to retire and live off the income. And I think that's where income properties come in. They produce that regular residual income. And, there's always some work. There's nothing completely passive about anything in the world. But when you get the right properties and you get the right people in place and the right systems, I mean, it's very realistic to spend, like a very, very part-time, 1 hour a week kind of part-time job, at least in my experience. Yep. And then you start asking the question, which I love to ask everybody, is like, what matters to you? Like, what would you do in your life if you had your income taken care of, if you had your investments covering your income instead of you having to work a job every day? And so that's sort of my vision that I try to help people with. And real estate is just such an awesome tool. So that's what we're here to talk about.
It is an awesome tool. And there was a post, and I'm going to mess up the wording, but you did a post on Instagram that went along those lines. And both of my parents have entered retirement age. They've retired in the last 2 to 5 years, both of them. And my dad's struggling with it more than my mom, but your post made me click of, okay, we're on the path to financial freedom through real estate investing, or retiring early through real estate. Am I going to know what to do, when I'm able to hit that? So it really jarred, question and thought. So, you mentioned you've been, straight out of college, you went into investing. So you've never really had a full-time job where you retired from, correct?
Right. Yeah. I didn't have a 9 to 5, but I did have like a 7 to 12 midnight job, just working as an entrepreneur. Like, when you first start, you hustle and do a lot, but I've never had to go clock in and do the whole thing,
Nice.
Going to work for somebody else. So I've been really lucky in that respect.
I wish I could say the same. and just so for those who don't know and don't follow you, you actually lived the life, right? So you and your family just spent quite a bit of time in South America, just gallivanting around, right? Just exploring and having fun. And you were able to do that through being able to have your income properties.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like our big motivation, everybody's got their thing they want to do. And like for us, it was travel and going abroad. And so my wife teaches Spanish and I've learned to speak Spanish, and we just enjoy a lot of Latin American cultures. So we took our they were 3 and 5 at the time, our 2 daughters, and we went there in beginning of 2017 to Ecuador, to a city called Cuenca. And we lived there, got an apartment, just kind of tried to live like locals. And our daughters went to local schools. We kind of threw them in the deep end. They learned to speak Spanish while they were there. And it was just a fabulous experience and growth experience, spent a lot of family time together. And so we just got back a couple months ago, and we're kind of reverse culture shock coming back into the United States, to figure out what it means to drive a car for 45 minutes everywhere you got to go and do all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. So, I want to make sure we have time to address Sabrina's questions. And Sabrina, ahead of time, I sent those over to Chad. So if you want to fire those at him, and then we can just dialogue through that, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay. Sure. Sounds good. The first one was, is it possible to use a FHA property that has already been purchased to make money?
Yeah, and I saw your question on that. So do you mean one that you already own, or do you mean one that like somebody else owns?
You already own it.
Okay, so you own a property, it has an FHA loan on it, and it's just like a residence for you right now? Something like that. Yeah. I mean, Jay can chime in here too, but like my favorite way to get started in real estate, like what I did, a little bit later on, and tons of people I know did, is to turn your residence into a rental property at some point. And so like the main question I would so it's definitely possible. Like if you have an FHA loan and you live there, there's nothing wrong or illegal, or it's in fact very good thing to do if you went out and found another house and you kept that one and you rented it out, that's definitely possible. The main question I would ask, and maybe if you want to share it, we could kind of brainstorm with you, is whether it makes sense as an investment. Like, is it a type of property that would be a good investment? Do the numbers work with your loan? So that would be my main question for you.
Okay. Those are the things that I was kind of in the process of researching. It made sense because it's a townhouse. Mm-hmm. And I just was trying to see if it was possible, because I know FHA just had different types of restrictions, and all of this is very new to me. So that was something I just wondered if it could actually be done. But that was the overall thought process, even when I first acquiring the property, was I want it to be something I can use as a rental.
Right. Great. Yeah. Chat. And so from an FHA standpoint, I've never had an FHA loan before, but I know there are some stipulations where you've got to live in it, I think for those first 6 months, or, for some period of time before, it qualifies for that, or before you can do anything with it from a rental standpoint. But Chad brings up an excellent point, and I was victim to this, where my first single family house that I purchased was a live-in flip. I ended up holding on to it as a rental because I thought it was going to make money. Mm-hmm. But after I ran the numbers, it was costing me several $100s a month to keep it. So that is a very excellent point, Chad. Just want to make sure, you run through your numbers like it would be any other opportunity you would analyze and say, okay, does this meet my investing criteria? So that's an excellent point.
Okay.
And the basic numbers I would run as you're doing your research, Sabrina, are if you can figure out through local investors, like in this, get building a network of other like rental landlord friends and maybe a property manager, you can eventually build a team around you, hopefully a network. Is ask them, like have one of them, take them out to lunch and say, would you mind coming by my townhouse and just helping me figure out what this would rent for if I put it out on the market? Because you might, I know when I first started, I had no clue, like, what's this thing going to rent for? You can start going and looking at Zillow, kind of Zestimates, and you can look at comps on Zillow to see what other properties similar to yours are renting for. That's a really good place to start. But I would also gather information from other investors and local experts, because what that rent will be sort of the determinant on what your ultimate cash flow might be after you take out your taxes, your insurance, your vacancy, your maintenance. I'm assuming you've probably studied a little bit of that, just kind of how to run the numbers. But some of the hardest part in my experience is just kind of pinning down what that real rent number is and then getting it. So go to local network to try to help you figure that out.
Okay.
Great questions when you're interviewing potential property managers if you're not going to self-manage.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
My second question was, of course, is it best to always have a mentor when you're new to real estate investing?
Well, yeah. And so I kind of think about mentors in a couple different categories. Like, first of all, I think it's great. And this is the case for me. Like, I had mentors locally in my market, which I just talked about having a network. And I think that's the critical point. I've done online coaching and I help people with real estate. I have a bias there, obviously, but I think I'll give you an example of my mentor. He was a professor at a local university, and I just met him when I was taking a class. I was auditing a class in management, and I sort of heard that he invested in real estate. He told stories about it. And so I just reached out to him as a new investor and said, hey, you mind if I, follow you around for a couple hours or ride around, or I forget what I said, but he, I asked some questions first, and I showed that I was interested and showed that I was sincere. And, from my experience, like the more veteran real estate investors, if they're super busy, it's gonna be tough maybe to get on their schedule sometimes, but particularly the more veteran investors, he was in his 60s, 70s, and we're just, having a new investor who's willing to ask questions and be humble enough to say, I don't know anything. You mind if I pick your brain? Give me some guidance. Like that kind of mentor, whether it's just a 1 or 2 time visit with them or an ongoing thing, like trying to reach out to those people locally is really powerful, because you might be able to see their properties, see what they do, and they're doing it in your town. It's not like theory, like they're right there. And the other great thing about that is my mentor, that his name is Dr. Stone. He ended up becoming a private lender for me. He ended up being, bringing me deals. Like, he was also a bird dog. He would find deals and, hey, Chad, here's a property you ought to follow up on. And I bought, 6, 7 properties probably from him. So like that kind of local expertise is just invaluable. And you can find them, I took a class and met him, but one of my favorite ways is going to local meetups and doing that. Like, sometimes it's a RIA group, sometimes it's like a Bigger Pockets local meetup. But then today also, like Facebook groups like J-Hosts, these kind of groups, if you can connect with other people in your area through your Facebook groups, those are just awesome too. So the main point being just like network with people and ask questions. And then, a more formal mentorship relationship is kind of another category. And like I do online classes. Like, I don't do as much one-on-one coaching now, but if you find some people who you resonate with and you like their approach to real estate and you like their approach to life, I've always been a person who invests in that kind of education and relationship and get some specific strategy and feedback advice. But I sort of differentiate those between your local person on the ground, which is super valuable. And if you need it, also maybe somebody to help you with strategy and big picture thinking. I think both of those can be helpful. What do you think, Jay? Have you had any mentors or people who have helped you out?
Well, I completely agree. I think the big thing there is not to just have one. Because you don't want to get in a tunnel vision. I do have one guy who's very much like Chad. He's in his late 60s, probably early 70s. He's been investing for longer than I've been alive. And his thought process and strategy is on one particular type of asset, which I'm not necessarily interested in doing. But as I bounce ideas off of him for other types of assets, he still has some really good information to provide. But I think that the takeaway point there is don't just have one, have multiple. And the best place is, the start of the Facebook group. I was surprised at how many people reached out that are my friends from, where I grew up and said, hey, I actually do some of this. Let's talk. So as you start talking about this and bringing it to more and more people, I think you're going to be surprised at how many of people that you already know already invest and will have some sort of knowledge to share with you.
Yeah, I really kind of piggyback on your point, Jay, is like, as you have one of those mentors, I can't reiterate enough that they're going to have a particular kind of expertise, and they might be a dream killer in some ways. Like I've had my mentor, that same person, at one point I remember in my career, I had to sort of do my own thing because he had another way of doing it and he had another strategy. And like at some point, you got to separate from the teacher and the student. Like you've got to do it your own way. You've got to take your own path. And so the caution there is like to get feedback, like Jay says, from a lot of different people. But then at some point, you're the captain, like you're the one in charge. And so you're the one who has to buy this property and you've got to feel comfortable with it. And there might be a strategy that you learn that experienced mentor doesn't know about. That's happened. So at some point you have to, that's why I think of it more like a mastermind. Like I have 6 or 7 people that I know are smart and have accumulated money. And I like to, even if I'm not talking to them directly, I'll be like, oh, what would Dr. Stone say on this? Or what would Joe say on this deal? And what would my dad say on this? And as you use that kind of mental mastermind, sort of like that Think and Grow Rich concept from that book, Think and Grow Rich, it'll help you to accumulate your own knowledge and make decisions.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for that. Third was, what was your biggest challenge when you started out?
Right. Yeah. Mine was, I was a 23-year-old kid who had like no credibility whatsoever and had never owned a house, never lived in a house. And I had to somehow convince people that I could actually buy their house. That was, I don't know if it was just boldness or just ignorance or what it was, but somehow it worked. But I think my story might be helpful to a lot of people, is that I was full-time, like every single day, like talking to realtors, riding around neighborhoods, sending out letters. I mean, I got like 6 months of experience of just intense, like trying to buy properties experience, which might take the amount of activity I did. Some people might do in like 5 years. And I had 0 results. Like I got rejected. I mean, I probably made at least 50 to 100 offers that didn't get accepted. Like, and I was starting to think, this is nuts. Like, what am I doing? And, but finally something clicked. I don't know what happened. I really don't remember what it was, but finally I got a deal. And so I think that my biggest challenge was just sort of having some self-confidence enough to like pivot and change and keep going when you're that little voice in your head saying, this is nuts. Like, what are you thinking you can do this? And, we all got our kind of handicaps, whatever it is. And mine happened to be, I was really young and didn't have any experience. Other people have different things that you have to overcome personally. And so I think that's it. If you can keep your confidence, and this is why that network and that Facebook group and all those are super helpful, because you can borrow confidence from other people sometimes when you get down and you're like, oh man, I just got rejected for the 20th time here. Am I doing something wrong? So I think if you can, for me, it helped having a vision. Like I was super passionate about where I wanted to go, and I believed in it. And I believe, even though you go through those doubt times, you kind of believe in yourself. So that helped me a lot.
Sabrina, you started laughing there. Did Chad touch on a nerve that's hit home with you?
Yeah, especially first of all, convincing someone that you could buy their house.
Yeah.
And just not having that information or that self-confidence, because that's one of my biggest things, was always just that fear of going into it, because you just don't know what the outcome is going to be. So it's kind of like you're walking into the whole situation kind of blinded, because you don't know. When you go to work every day, this is what's expected of you. You know what you're going to do. You know what happens once you're done. With this, you really don't. It's kind of like you just walk into everything blindsided, and what's going to be is going to be at the end. So it's just having that self-confidence to actually go ahead and walk through that tunnel, knowing you're going to come out on the other side okay.
Yeah. And I'll add to that. So to help boost your self-confidence, because in some of the notes you sent me, you were interested in basically any facet of real estate investing, right? Whether it's wholesaling to buy and hold. And when I started, I thought I wanted to be a wholesaler because I was excited about making that big chunk of cash in that one transaction. My personality, and I discovered this, but my personality does not fit to be a wholesaler. I'm more of I want to buy and hold. I want to hold the asset and I want to get that check every month. But I went through a transition of, I want to be a wholesaler. We sent out letters, we made the phone calls to, we finally got our first buy and hold property, and I wanted to be the property manager. I don't manage any of my properties now. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to be involved in real estate investing. But the biggest thing that come along for me is discover your why. And that came with when my kids arrived. So, or my first kid arrived, now we have two, but discover my why. And then once I knew why I wanted to invest in real estate, which for me is to be able to have the flexibility to spend more time with them, then I could establish my criteria, right? And then set your goals, and then you establish your criteria for investing. So your situation is probably going to be a little different, or it may be the same, but the biggest thing, and like you said earlier, you've been toying around with this idea for 20 years now. Just start, just take a step. And if it doesn't work out, there's nothing wrong with a course correction, I
totally agree. And on that theme, Sabrina, what would you say is your primary motivation? But beyond the real estate, just like, what would you like to see? You wave your magic wand and 2 or 3 years from now, financially something's happened with this real estate. Like what would that do for your life? Like what's your motivation?
My why is definitely that financial freedom for myself and my family.
Yep.
As I said, my kids are grown now, but it's kind of like they never really grow up. So just being able to just enjoy everything that we have left, on this planet, just to be able to enjoy that financially free and never having an employer. I think for me, my frustration came when you reach those points in working where you have to ask for permission to kind of have a day off, to take your kid to the doctor, or to just be there for them if they just need you to be there, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be. But you basically just need permission from someone else to be able to do that. So to just have that type of freedom to be able to do those things, for me, that is definitely my why in it. And I wanted to start with wholesaling only because from what I had learned so far, it was one of the easiest ways to come in without kind of risking it all for yourself financially.
Right. Well, yeah, it is. And I think Jay brings up a good point about his personalities. And that's kind of where I was going with this. Like, so I always ask people when I first kind of help them brainstorm what strategy they should use within real estate. I like to sort of do almost like a balance sheet or like an analysis on like, what are my strengths and weaknesses? And so Jay mentioned, him for whatever reason, wholesaling and sending out letters and negotiating with 100 people at a time, like wasn't his thing for whatever reason. But like what you've had a career and you've trained people as a senior trainer, like what would you say some of your like strengths as an entrepreneur, as an employee are that you might be able to bring to whatever venture you're doing here?
I think for me, it's mostly having that communication with people and just knowing how to communicate with them and getting them on board. I think my fear is more so, I don't know if it's fear of that rejection in case they don't bite. I think that maybe more so what the fear was, whereas in training, this is what you need to know. I already know what you need to know. So I have to give it to you and you kind of have to accept it. Where you still do get some pushback, but because I know that this is now your new direction, I know that you need it. So I'm learning to look at this as we're actually solving problems for individuals. So just relating to them in a way that makes them feel more comfortable with, why should I trust you to help me resolve my issue?
Yep. Yeah, I love how you framed it there, Sabrina. Like you're helping them solve their problem, and you're talking to people. So I mean, you're obviously a good communicator, and you've worked with people, and you've led people. So there's going to be a way to translate those strengths to real estate. And it sounds to me though, like you might, and you tell me, correct me if I'm wrong though, like 3 to 5 years from now, you might be happy like like making your like day-to-day income, like flipping or wholesaling, or somehow like you'd like to make a job transition in addition to having some investment properties. Is that accurate?
Definitely.
Okay. So I'm just going to give you a personal opinion on like, because I did it one way and I've helped other people do it. And I've observed a lot. Like there's 2 different problems we're trying to solve. Like one is I want to make some income today to pay my bills today, which I've had to do that for the last 16 years in real estate. So I've been there, done that too. And then you're also eventually you're gonna like build some assets. You're gonna own these properties that produce income. So like those are two separate, look at those as two separate things. Like those are two separate business models. And there's nothing wrong with starting with like the first business model, which is I'm in the business of making some money right now with real estate. And that's like kind of give yourself that job description. I'm not an investor yet, although you might be if you like rent out your house or something. That would be one way to start doing that. But like what I would look at, like what are the options out there? You could be a wholesaler, which is basically just means you're a really good deal finder. You're like doing a lot of volume. You're making 10, 15 offers a week and maybe getting one accepted. And that's just your job. That's what your business is. That's one way to do it. You could flip houses. That's another way to do it. That's where you actually get the money, you flip it, you fix it up, you flip it. But another, like probably my favorite way for somebody who's new and doesn't want to take a lot of risk is not wholesaling. I recommend getting a license, getting your real estate license. And this might be a totally different path. Just let it land where it will. You can feel free to do what you want, but like get your real estate license because you're going to learn some about the basics of Florida real estate law. You're going to learn how things work. You're going to hang it with a broker, and you're going to hopefully pick a good broker who could be a mentor, could be an educator for you on how real estate transactions work. So there you go. The mentor question: how do I get a local mentor? But then you could there's a lot of different business models you could have with your real estate license, and so. That you could be like just a pure like realtor listing agent helping people list their houses. You could be a buyer's agent who helps people find their houses and kind of shows them around. You could do that. But you could also be like a leasing agent helping a property manager get properties rented out, which I really like because not many licensees do that. And you make a little bit of money, but you start learning a lot about the landlording business. Or you could have that license and you could go out and do what a wholesaler does. And let's say like you meet with 10 sellers, during the next month, and you talk to all of them and your attitude is just, I'm just going to try to help you solve your problem. Like I'm not here with an agenda. Like, I don't know how we're going to solve your problem, but you have a house, you want to do something with this house to help you with your life. And so you like listen to them and you kind of have a toolbox of tools and you say, all right, well, one tool is they could sell it to me wholesale because they just need to get rid of it and sell it for cash. That's one option. That's gonna be the lowest price. Or maybe they want to, they're willing to do a little bit of work and kind of fix this property up and sell it. And in that case, it probably is better just to list it with a realtor. And so what you could do is you're kind of like the person on the front end who meets with these people, and you'll have a relationship with a more experienced realtor or real estate agent who will list the properties for you. And you'll basically partner with them on commissions. Like anytime there's a person who says, yeah, I just want to list the house, that makes sense. Then you'll refer it to this person. They'll close the listing. You'll make some money every time they list that house. And if they say, no, I just want to sell it cheap, that's fine. I just need to get rid of this house. Then you could be a wholesaler. You can make an offer. You say, look, there's other options, but if you just want to do that, I'll put it under contract to buy it just as a buyer, me as a buyer. And then you go and find another either person to wholesale it to or another partner. So you can have a business model. I think I like that business model better because first of all, you have your license. A lot of people get in trouble with wholesaling because they're doing referral fees and they're doing some stuff that like technically could be a real estate licensee. And you're also having the mentor, and you're also having multiple ways to make money, because if you're trying to do this full time, like you've got to hustle, you've got to find lots of different ways to make money. And I think getting your license and finding kind of a little niche that works for you is probably the easiest way to make some money.
Okay.
That's great advice. Chad. I want to make sure, because we're coming up on about 30 minutes is what we agreed to before. If y'all want to extend, I'm happy to extend. Chad, Sabrina, I want to be respectful of both of y'all's time. So you let me know if y'all want to continue on or maybe for another 5 minutes or so.
I'm actually good. Yeah. If you want to go for another 15, 20 minutes, I'm good.
Perfect. Great.
Okay. I'm good as well.
Well, let's keep going then.
Okay. But next question, of course, was if you knew then, if you know now what you knew, if you know then what you know now, what would you do different?
What do you think, Jay? I'm going to think about that one for a second.
So, it goes back to discovering your why. Now, of course, when we get into different chapters in our lives, that why could change. But when you get set on a path, my thing has been recently, when I stick to my investing criteria, the risk, it really goes down. Now I have a tripod of investing criteria that I use to analyze and look at properties before we pull the trigger on them. But it's when I get outside of those investing criteria and I get emotional about the deal and think, man, this really could be great, instead of just accepting what the face value is of it as it is in today's market, I tend to get in trouble. So what I, yeah. So if I were to tell myself, 5 years ago, hey, when you start this, develop your investing criteria and stick to them. If it doesn't work out for you, it doesn't work out for you. And I've had, sellers cuss me out because of offers that I gave them, but they stuck. I mean, they fit within my criteria that I was looking for. So just be strict about it, develop them, and then, and be patient. Just because they're your investing criteria, you're not going to find, potentially you're not going to find a whole lot of deals that fit that model. Right. So now that's from a buy and hold standpoint. I've never actually flipped or wholesaled a property, so it may be a little different for you, but just know what you're looking for and, set your minimums. If you're trying to wholesale property and you want to make, $1,000 is your minimum, be honest to yourself about what the rehab numbers are going to look like, and be honest to your potential buyer of what the rehab estimates are going to look like,
And I would probably start with a higher number on my wholesale fee. Like wholesaling is tough because you got to basically get it cheaper than Jay or anybody else who's just buying it as a like, you're going to be buying it for landlords or for flippers. And so you've got to build your profit in by actually getting it below value. And so whether it's $5,000, $10,000, I've made bigger checks on wholesale deals just rarely, but $3,000 to $10,000 is kind of a normal range that you're shooting for. But I agree 100% with Jay that you got to have some deal criteria and stick to them and understand how to run the numbers. It's really big. I think the thing I would do over again is related to what we just talked about, is I would have a clear idea of who I am in business. Like, am I a flipper? Am I a landlord? I mean, I had the benefit of being full-time in the real estate business from the very beginning. Sometimes I'd have an identity crisis. Like, am I flipping the house? Am I buying this as a landlord? Am I like, what am I doing? And I went through a period where I would just do deals just to do deals. Like, all right, that's the deal. I know I got good at making deals work and negotiating. I shouldn't have bought all those deals. Like, they weren't my deals. And so I think that's where I went back to talking about a business model, like whether you have a license or you're a wholesale or whatever, focus is the key word. Focus. You've got to, I would rather you be too focused on a location, like be really narrow on where you're investing on a certain location, be really narrow on a type of strategy you're using, wholesaling, or using a license to make fees that way. Like, be super narrow early on, because the biggest risk I see people running into as a new investor is this overwhelm, analysis paralysis thing where oh, that's good. I listened to the Bigger Pockets podcast today. There's somebody else doing mobile homes. There's somebody doing this. And like, it's awesome. Like, there's so many ideas out there, but you've got to find a focus, and don't worry about it being the wrong focus. Like, you just got to focus. Like Jay said earlier, you just got to do something. And if it's the wrong thing, like, entrepreneurs pivot and change all the time. I mean, look at the best of them. Look at Elon Musk. Look at, the guy, Steve Jobs at Apple. Like, if you just read any entrepreneur's story, they probably failed, 5 or 6 times before they even got their first break. They probably changed and pivoted every 3 to 5 years. And so, like, don't beat yourself up if you have to do the same thing. If you have to change and don't work at front, but don't make the mistake of just being like a kind of a spraying a water, everywhere, instead of like focusing like a laser beam on one little thing for the next 3 to 6 months, and just do that next deal, do it the way the approach you're trying to use, and don't get distracted by all the shiny objects.
Yeah. I was listening to a book yesterday. It was Fail Until You Don't by Bobby Bones. And he mentions in there how Walt Disney was not hired at the first newspaper they applied to for his drawing characters because the editor told him he wasn't creative enough. So I was like, wow, that's
Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that editor's name, do we?
No, probably not. Sabrina, you got one more question for us?
Yeah, my last question just is, what would be your best advice for someone that has not completed a deal yet?
I would just focus on, like, I would make my goal not to be financially independent. I would not make my goal to have a bunch of rental properties. I would make my goal to do one deal, or maybe even more narrowly, I would make my goal to make 10 offers. Like I wouldn't even make it to do a deal. Like one of the most important things that I realized, and you actually brought this up, because when you're at a job, you have these results and these objectives and people are kind of telling you what your success is. And when you're a real estate investor, an entrepreneur, it's just like a vacuum. You're having to figure everything out for yourself. And so I instead of me worrying about doing a deal, I would worry about the behaviors that I could control. And so that what can I control? I can control how many listings I look at, how much marketing I do, how many offers I make. And I would actually, like, that's for years. I'm not as much in like a gung ho, like go buy a bunch of properties mode right now. But when I am buying them, every single day and every single week, I make a goal on how many offers I'm going to make. And it's not a successful week if I haven't done those sort of behaviors that I know will lead to the results I want. And so that's my advice is, like, don't worry about 10 houses. Don't worry about like financial freedom. Worry about that one house, that one next deal you're going to do, and break it down even further and say, we're just worried about those offers that you're going to make. And that's where you fail on those. You're going to make some offers and people are going to reject you. That's fine. But you're going to learn so much more when you get in the field and start doing that than you ever could from talking to me and Jay, from reading my book, or whatever you're going to do. Like, I want you to get the book, but it's like, that's like 100 times better education is getting rejected, 10 times in the next month. Yeah.
So focus on the drills is what you're saying, Chad. Just focus on the drills and the repetition. And,
yes,
and basically, if you think of it from an athletic standpoint, create that muscle memory so that when a deal comes through, you're ready for it. Right. So, yes. And it's not as an emotional, and I used the word emotional earlier, but for me, it has been for the last couple of years until I finally developed some of those drills for myself and saying, okay, I'm going to analyze 3 deals a day. I'm going to make 1 offer a week. And I did that for 7 or 8 months, and it tremendously helped. So I definitely agree with that. Focus on the drills, not necessarily the outcomes, because the outcomes are going to come, right? And if you mess up, you're not the first person to mess up, and it's probably not going to be your last.
You'll join our club. You'll join the failure club.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Well, guys, I thank you again for your time. Sabrina, thank you for winning the contest. Chad, thank you for winning. Thank you for winning at real estate investing. But thank you for sharing with us your thoughts and knowledge and I know there's a longer title, like the subtitle. I know it's real estate, retire early with real estate, but what's the subtitle to it?
Man, I didn't even write the subtitle. I think it's
really long.
Escape the 9 to 5. Use smart investing to escape the 9 to 5 and do what matters. I did use the do what matters was mine.
Do what matters sounds like
the rest of it was pretty good in the marketing team, but
yeah. Well, good deal. Well, and so a little bit more about the book. It's out now. It's available for pre-order. Sabrina, I did order your copy, so it's headed your way, which is part of the giveaway. And then Chad, one more or last kind of final thought. Where can people find out more about you?
Sure. Thank you. I hang out at coachcarson.com. That's my home on the web. And I took the coach name just because I used to play sports and love helping people and love kind of getting down to the fundamentals. Hopefully that showed through a little bit that I care and I love working with people. And so if you come to my website, I have a blog with a lot of articles, and I get into details of how does a cap rate work? How do you use a cap rate? How do you run numbers on deals? How do you, I go into examples and case studies. So it's sort of my hub for anything that's educational and helpful. And so if you go there, I'd love to connect with you all there on coachcarson.com.
A lot of great content there. I'm a subscriber. So
thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I actually got my toolkit today. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Sabrina. It takes a lot of courage just to go out and kind of say what's on your mind and put your fears out there. So
absolutely.
Good luck with everything you have going on. Look forward to following up with you in the Facebook group.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Y'all too. Bye-bye.